Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'm going to be doing an overview of the latest patch notes for Final Fantasy 16, coinciding with the release of the Rising Tide DLC. Now, funny thing, I was going to do this video a couple of days ago because Square Enix actually posted them. And then I guess it was an accident because they took it offline. And if they took it offline, I figure, I could easily find the patch notes still, but I'll wait until they're actually out. All the same, there's a lot of buffs to various skills. And now that I've actually played through the Rising Tide, thank you New Zealand copy, I can actually comment on some of the changes and how it feels to play the game post Rising Tide. And TLDR, it feels a lot more freeing. I really felt like the additions they made to a lot of the skills actually got me experimenting again and trying some new stuff, not to mention the new things that you can actually get inside of the DLC itself. But without further ado, the patch took place April 18th, this morning, as of the recording of this video, and has a whole bunch of stuff. So first of all, orchestrion roles added to regional shops. There's a few new ones in there. I think there's still one or two that are actually missing, and oddly enough, I think they were from the DLC area. I'm not going to say much else, but I definitely couldn't find one that I was looking for. So I don't know why. It feels like they've always had this weird thing with 16 where there's like a couple of songs that shouldn't be missing, but are missing at seemingly random points. For battle adjustments, now I actually want to say the quality of life UI additions made in certain icon battles, I haven't gotten to test yet. I've only done the new icon battle, and I didn't really notice much else different, but I was kind of so into the fight that it was hard to notice. But the other one, player attack increased outside of select icon battles. Now that's interesting because I did feel as if while I was just KOing random enemies, like they were a little bit less spongy on Final Fantasy mode, really just the fodder enemies. But I also never really felt like they were that tanky to begin with. So I had a hard time really telling if this one was, I guess, how effective it was, or how it was actually working, where it was working, etc., etc. However, this is the exciting bit. They made a ton of buffs to various different skills, ones that I genuinely think they needed to make changes to, especially the first 5, actually the first 8 patch notes here. So the first 5 are all about Ramuh's iconic feat, Blind Justice. For those who haven't played in a while, or for some reason are watching this and not at all, it's where you go into the lock-on mode with Ramuh, you try to get all the lock-ons, then you fire the orbs, and then when you actually hit the enemies, the orbs explode. So first of all, 2 instances of ball lightning now fire when exacting Blind Justice, so it hits twice as much. Now, on top of that, instead of hitting the enemies to blow them up, you can just press the feat button again, so you can manually detonate. Those 2 changes alone made it feel a whole lot better. I did go out of my way to actually try Blind Justice, hard to say. Now, on top of that, he can move faster, he can dodge, and recovers poise more quickly after exacting it. All of these things were great, not to mention there was an accessory that made it even easier to use that I found in the DLC. So if you're someone who really wanted a mage build to work but were disappointed with Ramuh's Blind Justice, I will say it feels a whole lot better. It's still not one of my favorites, but I think it's enough to teeter you over to that if you're willing to give up one of the other iconic feats, including Leviathan's new one, which I actually think goes along pretty well with Blind Justice. Now, on top of that, another iconic feat I really didn't like that much was Mega Flare, and it's just because it felt like I had to go too far out of my way to use it. It's been made a little bit better here. For example, when you cancel the iconic feat, the Mega Flare charge only depletes to the next gauge level, so you don't feel as locked in. You can kind of come in and out of it, but you still are going to want to stay in Bahamut mode. You're not going to want to swap to another one of your iconic feats. That I noticed actually still depleted it, so I was kind of disappointed at that. However, if you just stay in the iconic feat, it only goes down to 1, so you can go in and out of it a little bit more smoothly. Now, also, you can press Wings of Light, and it will actually dodge on the frames that you activate it. So you can use it as another dodge option, which is a massive buff to it that makes it feel a whole lot better. And on top of that, successfully dodging an attack when initiating Wings of Light will trigger a Mega Flare dodge, which means you are going to get that charge level on top of it. So charging it's a whole lot faster. There is also a new accessory that speeds up the charge rate on top of it and makes the input window longer. So similar to Blind Justice, if this is another skill you thought you were gonna use because it looked like it would be really strong, this I think is enough to kind of teeter it over the edge. I liked Mega Flare dodge before. I thought the damage output for actually getting the charge was substantial. But same deal, it just felt like I was going too far out of my way to use Mega Flare and Mega Flare Dodge to actually get it. With this, it's definitely a lot more user-friendly on top of the other stuff that you can do to buff it now. So all of those changes already great. But the rest of the changes going forward, again, just make certain things a little bit better. The parry animation when you use Arm of Darkness has been changed. I actually didn't do that. I deliberately avoided using Odin and Zentetsuken because, I mean, let's be honest. I did it in the Omega DLC. I did it throughout most of the game once I figured it out. And there's a lot of people who went out of their way to become Zentetsuken spammers. I made sure not to do that, and I had a fantastic time. But I do like parrying, so I like that. Now, the minimum jump height for initiating Stomp is interesting. I never really felt like it was that high to begin with. Stomp is a tech that I don't see a lot of people using. It's where you jump off of the enemies, and you can use it to extend air combos quite well. You've probably seen it a lot in any sort of air combo video or combo video at all. However, this may get you actually using it. It may also get you using it by accident if you're someone who's not trying to do it, but you find yourself trying to jump again in the middle of combat. All the same, appreciated, but I hadn't noticed that it needed it before. The direction Clive faces after using Swift Recovery has been adjusted. Didn't really notice that, but I'm going to assume that it was working better. Limit break attacks now lift enemies instead of knocking them. That's so good. The knock was so stupid. I hated it so much. So that was a lot better. Apologies for that. And then we get into just outright buffs, like across the board for like tons and tons of stuff. Gouge damage increase, Gouge will damage increase, Gouge recast is reduced. I noticed things like that were massive. I started with using Gouge in the DLC, like when I was trying to do the not Zentetsuken stuff, and I thought I was like, am I too strong? Like I was just used to what it did before. It's so good now. It was already good before. It's even better now. The big thing about the will damage increase is it makes it so that between the will damage increase and the damage increase, using it as kind of like a second skill inside of a stagger is a little bit better now. You want to actually have a bit of damage built up before going into using Gouge. So you want like a 1.1 or a 1.15, but you will easily finish the 1.5 by the time you're done with all of that. Aerial Blast now dispels ranged magic attacks. Massive. It still blinds you to the point where you can't see anything, but at the very least, projectiles won't randomly find you while that's happening now. And its will damage is increased. Its will damage was already good before. It's just even better now. Wind up area effect is increased. Easier to land. Definitely appreciate that. And Earthen Fury had its recast time reduced. One of the less popular limit breaks. You know, it's got some initial cool value, but this doesn't really sway me on it anymore. I still really like a lot of the other ultimates, even if I'll see more Earthen Furies now than I would have seen before. Just a personal taste thing. Flare Breath now also dispels certain ranged magic attacks. Flare Breath is not a common skill you see. You don't really see it in combo videos, and it's one of those clunkier skills to use, one of those things you really want to work, but you kind of have to make it work. This helps it a long way, on top of the fact that it now lifts enemies instead of knocking them back when canceling. Oh, that was the main reason I stopped using it in the first place when I got it. So that is a massive one, and its damage is increased. Can't complain about that. Now, the satellite buffs. I love satellite. It's actually a skill that I forced myself to use despite the kind of other OP stuff in a lot of scenarios. I just found that it's way better than it seems. It's just that you have to press triangle so much to use it. But with the new Leviathan stuff, I found that I was already using triangle a lot in that skill, so I would combo it with satellite, and I found that I was essentially just a walking turret. Damage, recast, will damage, all buffed. Ice Age as well, damage and will damage increased. I enjoyed Ice Age's buffs, but Ice Age for me is it's not a skill I really vibe with. So, but it is a great combo skill. So this really helps against fodder enemies because you will absolutely massacre through them. With the will damage increase, it's also really good against bosses now, a lot better than it was before. So that's the big thing that happened here is a lot of these skills, you could find situations they were kind of fun, but there were also situations where they felt bad to use. I feel like Ice Age is definitely a benefactor of not really feeling bad on bosses anymore that aren't affected by its more interesting capacities. The ice crystal generated when using Rime will now better draw in nearby enemies. One of the first things I tested. I'm still a bit iffy about it, but I definitely made it work. I guess for me, it's another one of those, you know, on bosses, they just kind of walk out of it. And so it's less interesting. I don't like to swap, even with the new loadout system, which is great, by the way. You just press L1 or R1 in the menu and you can swap between the different loadouts. Works great. I think that's mentioned somewhere later in the patch notes, but I don't like to go into the menu, change, come out of the menu. For those who do like doing it, it's easy now. And if you do want to use this on trash, it's fantastic. But again, I'm not a super big fan of it on the bosses themselves. Rhyme's will damage increase. That was a massive increase. I felt that. So that's all I'll say. Now, I actually, because I was avoiding the Zentetsuken, I didn't check these ones. Gungnir's recast and will damage increased. So Gungnir is the one where he, you know, he's spinning around and he chains all the spear swings. It's very important that that will damage is the main factor that they decided to increase, because the biggest problem with Odin is that if you really want to use any of his skills other than Rift Slip, then you kind of have to bring Odin, because none of them were very good without actually getting you closer to Zentetsuken. That was like kind of the benefit. And in that case, everyone just went Dancing Steel, because you could just get a full gauge off one Dancing Steel. Plus you could combo it with Lightning Rod. There's so many things that would benefit towards it. The will damage increase at least gives it somewhat of a viable use outside of that, but I can't see myself doing it regardless, even with the recast and will damage increase. Now, Heaven's Cloud got something interesting. Chained follow-up attacks can now be focused on a single enemy by locking on. I really like that. I definitely preferred to use it that way, and it didn't work that way before, so that I appreciate. Also, will damage and recast. Again, trying to make these skills a little more useful outside of just their charge towards Zentetsuken, but with all the buffs to the other skills, plus the skills that were already good, I personally still don't find much love for all of the other Zentetsuken skills. It's the kind of stuff that you might see in combo videos. It's going to be really flashy, and it's probably going to be really effective. But I guess for me also, Heaven's Cloud, I have a bit of a negative relationship with. Some of you may remember how the arcade mode went initially, and Heaven's Cloud was a big problem there. They've made tons of changes since then. I'm not really worried about it for that reason, but I guess I kind of just lean away from using it after that all the same. Now, on top of that, accessory adjustments, they made all of these accessories better. They're just different buffs to Gouge, Earthen Fury, Gungnir, Heaven's Cloud. So basically, again, focusing on the skills that were underappreciated or underloved. Earthen Fury getting its buffs there, definitely going to be good. What I don't remember is if these are the damage or the cooldown ones. I have to assume that Favor is damage and breath are all cooldown, but I don't remember. They do have like a theme to them. It's just I didn't look at them before. So, and then Cavalli's Fang and Cavalli's Bite, which again, those are the puppers ones. Those are the Torgal ones. I wonder how those are. I actually kind of want to test those because I'm a big Torgal fan. Other changes to actions, alleviated rare issues of Clive jumping when accessing objects under certain conditions. Yeah, I had that happen a few times, nothing major. Made adjustments to when Torgal can be petted and lower time before re-petting. Honestly, why even have other patch notes? Just do that. Made adjustments to calculations for the amount of damage taken when near death. So essentially making it so you're, well, not going to die as quickly. I wonder if that's all the time or specifically under certain conditions. I'd assume it's all the time, but I'm not going to lie, playing on Final Fantasy mode, I never had the opportunity to see what it was like because most of the time I just died outright anyway. Now, some quality of life stuff. Quick complete function. Literally, when you get to a point where you have to go back to town and talk to an NPC, a pop-up shows up, you hold start, you go right to the NPC. Fantastic. Should have been that way to begin with. Definitely helps a bit of the tedium when it comes to doing the quest, especially for the number of quests that the PC players will be doing, who don't have the advantage of having already played through the game a ton. New quest icon has been assigned to quests which reward collectibles. That was a very nice one. I noticed that without reading the patch notes, and then I read them later, and I was like, oh, so that's what that was. I was wondering why they were all so different. Ability points awarded for certain side quests have been increased. That's particularly good. They'll get you to some of those skill upgrades a little bit sooner. Additional cutscenes have been added to certain side quests. We know what those cutscenes are. I have not watched them yet. We know that they added cutscenes showing the removal of Clive's brand. And I very much want to see those. So I'm going to have to go out of my way and check that out. Minor changes have been made to cutscene staging. Don't know exactly what they mean by that, but it felt like same old to me. And new NPCs have been added to certain settlements. I also did, yeah, again, I just spent all my time in the DLC area, so I'll have to go and check that out as well. Now, some other really important stuff. Custom controller type. Listen, they had to get around to it sooner or later, but yes, now you can freely assign functionality to the buttons of the controller. Listen, they needed to do this. Imagine if they didn't have this by the time the PC version came out. Yikes. So that's done. Skill sets have been added. That is the skill loadout. You press L1 or R1, bam, you can quick swap between them. So works great. Honestly, it feels like it was always there, but it wasn't. The following functionality has been added to photo mode, focal distance adjustments for in depth of field. I think I remember trying to take a screenshot for a thumbnail when it first came out and not being able to do that and getting really annoyed. So I'm actually really glad to see that one. Tone correction, screen effects, portrait mode, and 90-degree rotation and roll functionality. Nice. Minor updates in addition to the 1,000 tomes, visual updates to the State of the Realm timeline slider, missed that one, and updates and additions to the UI and various menus. Felt mostly the same to me, but you know, I'm not super great at noticing that kind of stuff. And then there were a ton of bug fixes. Honestly, going through all of these is not anything super crazy. Issues with party ally AI, issues with character motion, like a lot of these are super broad. NPC names not properly updating in conjunction with game progression, graphics not appearing correctly in certain, yet the usual stuff, you know, icons not displaying, rare instances of past State of the Realm content being unavailable for viewing, notices not appearing in proper times, incorrect screenshots and videos in certain tutorials. I hadn't noticed that one. I don't know how. Inability to obtain certain redeemable items when starting New Game Plus. That's a pretty important one. Various instances of game crashes, spelling and grammar. I remember there being a few of those. So yeah, there's just the general cleanup of making things a little bit better. Overall, Rising Tide has been fantastic. I still have to go through the Kairos gates, but it took me about 7 hours to do just the story on Final Fantasy mode. I have a new favorite icon fight, and honestly, I loved all of Leviathan's skills. I was using 4 of them out of my 6 skill slots on top of using the iconic feat. And I love them. It was just a whole different play style. Again, it really made me feel good about getting away from Giga Flares and Tetsuken, Diamond Dust. And I didn't think that was possible to get me feeling good about not using those skills. And those skills are still really good. Let me tell you, I did them for a little bit and I'm like, yeah, those are as good as I remember. But I didn't feel bad swapping to something else. And that's really important because it makes me feel more excited for the eventual next full playthrough I'll do, where I'm going to allow my chat to freely change my skill loadout based on what I have unlocked. So I have to get used to using a little bit of everything for when the PC version comes out anyway. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this overview on the patch notes. I'm going to be also releasing my full playthrough, the 7-hour VOD on my main channel as opposed to my VOD channel. I'll also be maybe separately uploading just the Leviathan fight itself because it's an absolute banger. And I'm also going to upload Kairos Gates, my thoughts on it. So just expect a lot of Final Fantasy 16 stuff mixed in with my Final Fantasy 14 stuff over the next couple of days. But with that, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for anything Final Fantasy related. If I'm interested in it, I post about it. Anyway, with that, I will see you in the next video. Take care.